What's going on, everyone? Welcome into a live Cleveland Browns report. Matthew Peterson hanging out with you guys here on a Tuesday afternoon at the end of January, right before the Super Bowl. And you know the offseason is here when the number one topic surrounding the Browns online is T. Higgins follow Deshaun Watson on Instagram, which means T. Higgins wants to come play for the Cleveland Browns. That is when you know we are at the peak offseason, but I do applaud everyone for watching right now because the casuals will bow out during these low tide periods. They'll probably come back for free agency and then bow out again and then come back for the draft. But you know what happens to the casuals that do that? When the season rolls around and the going gets tough, they are the ones looking around going, who's that guy on the field? I don't even know who that is right now. Oh, that's because you weren't paying attention in the offseason and you don't know the backup running back. That's who number 34 is. So, welcome into a live Cleveland Browns report. Shout out your city right now as the audience builds up. Everyone clicks on the notification and files on in, finds their seat. I want to know where you are watching from. So, get in the chat right now. Let me know where you are tuning in from. I'm giving shout outs as Joshua Miller gets the show started with a super chat. Josh, appreciate you, my man. I got Ray Bidding in the house here. IDG in Cleveland. Jacob Smith in Cleveland. Julian, what's going on, buddy? Ray is watching from Phoenix. Cool guy, the Ravens blow. That is factually correct. Josh, $5 super chat. Two things I learned in the playoffs. Never bet against Patrick Mahomes. And aggressive is good until it costs a spot in the Super Bowl. Take the points. Josh, these are two very good points to make. Never bet against Patrick Mahomes. I got burned on that. I didn't think the Chiefs would be able to kind of put it together after such a lag offensively for a long stretch this season. They lost at Green Bay. It's a so-so Packers team. There were some bad moments for the Chiefs, but I think right now Patrick Mahomes is hitting that era where there was that stretch where people kept thinking this is when Tom Brady comes down to earth. This is when Nick Saban and Alabama come down to earth. I'm just not going to bet against them. I'm not saying you have to bet on the Chiefs. Just don't bet against them. Just take that day off if you really don't like the Chiefs that day. Go ahead.
I will add, shout out to Dan Campbell because that's what got him. Being aggressive is what got him there in the first place. You live by the sword, die by the sword.
I get that. A couple thoughts on the Lions and the aggressiveness from Dan Campbell. There is some truth to they would not have been that spot if they were not aggressive earlier in the year. Also, I think there are moments we have to read the room a little bit. And I think being aggressive in week 6 against the Buccaneers is a little bit different than being aggressive with a lead in the second half against the 49ers. So I don't think it's fair to compare the two in the NFC Championship. One other thing I'll add that I think is being glossed over is those that are defending Dan Campbell's aggressiveness have often pointed to, you guys are acting like Michael Badgley was a lock to make that kick. He had pretty bad percentage-wise field goal makes from 40 to 49 yards. Here's a thought. Why is he your kicker then? I know it's tough to find a kicker, but if your argument for not kicking a field goal is we don't even think he would have made that 47-yarder, you should find a new kicker. 40 inside of 50, you got to have trust in your kicker to make. Josh, appreciate your super chat. And a $2 super. No. This is an absolute farce. It's an absolute sham. And it's a disgrace, but it's the NCAA. I was talking to Trace before we went live. Does anyone that work at the NCAA offices like themselves? If you have not seen the news, it's not even really news yet. It's the NCAA alleging that they are going to make allegations against Tennessee, but they won't say to what department. They won't say to what coach. They won't even say what the allegations are about. They are just saying we might say something. What is this? Get over yourselves. All right. If I keep going, I'm going to have a heart issue. Shout out your city in the chat right now. Let me know where you are watching from right now. While you are doing that, I do have to tell everyone about our lovely sponsor today, which is Prize Picks. We all know the Super Bowl is right around the corner, and there are so many great ways to stay locked in on the Super Bowl. So let's add one more fun wrinkle to it, and that is Prize Picks. With Prize Picks, you pick 2 to 6 players, and then choose more or less on their projected stats. Now, for all the boys watching right now with wives, girlfriends, fiancés, let me give you a free hack right now. If you have always struggled to keep your significant other locked in on the game, just let them loose some prize pick selections. That way they can really be locked in from the first quarter to the fourth, and they're not talking to the game and silent during the commercials. That's my biggest pet peeve. So you can choose more or less on Patrick Mahomes at half a passing yard. That's all. We just need one. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I also like the more on Isaiah Pacheco at half a rushing or receiving touchdown. And then finally, the more on Brock Purdy at 248.5 passing yards. So if you like my selections, feel free to ride with me at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Now that link is in the comments and description of today's video. While we let the audience continue to build up two more questions, and then we're going to jump into today's show, which is all about the latest Browns news and rumors and a perfect offseason plan. But first, who you got? It is the Super Bowl, and as long as your team did not lose in the AFC or NFC championship game, it is a time where I think as football fans, we have to come together and go, let's enjoy the last game of the season. Like, I don't want to hear – the worst is the people that go like, I don't care, my team's not in it. It's the fucking Super Bowl. What are you doing?
What else are you going to watch?
Yeah.
Honestly.
And you're going to enjoy it. You're going to love it. It's still the Super Bowl. So who you got? 49ers or Chiefs? I'm thinking, I know what Josh just said. And he just said don't bet against Mahomes. But damn it, I like the Niners.
The Niners are a good team.
Oh, they're complete. They really are. I remember before the season started thinking, I don't think the 49ers can go all the way because they're so top heavy. Like, they don't have a ton of depth, but they have incredible talent.
And they're healthy.
They didn't get any injuries this year, and that's a big reason why they are here, and they are healthy. Like, they've got Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. And I didn't even talk about Brock Purdy, right? I know that Brock Purdy isn't everyone's cup of tea. I think he's a great quarterback, but that's not even looking at the quarterback. And then the defense, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Nick Bosa. Like, they've got dudes everywhere. And the Chiefs are great, but the 49ers have a better roster. It's just that Kansas City has this guy who wears the number 15, and he seems to be Houdini, and he levels the playing field. So I'm thinking Niners. What are you guys thinking? Ray says San Francisco. Terry is watching from Flowery Branch, hanging out with the Atlanta Falcons. Cool guy, stop it. Stop it. Get some help. You are watching the Super Bowl. Lil Beam says San Francisco. IDG says KC. Jersey Dog is in South Jersey. Scott Zappa, appreciate you tuning in, Scott. Going with Kansas City. I got David Kemper in Minster. I've got Jersey Dog going with the Chiefs. Ty Man the Buckeye, Bang Bang Niner Gang. Ty Man, I don't think you realize how often you are like just tossed around the Chat Sports office for your incredible NOTI Gang skills and being in every single live show possible.
I mean, he's like a legitimate legend here in the office.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable.
Josh is in Michigan as always. Yeah, I don't blame you, Josh. Josh, when the Chiefs win, you have the right to virtually slap me across the face for taking the 49ers. I know the Chiefs are going to win.
I'm going to
go the Niners.
Can Shanahan win the big game?
I
Andy
know.
Reid can.
Yep.
He's beat a lot of teams despite having a not as great offense as usual.
I know. And if the 49ers win, for some of the older viewers out there, a little nostalgia, you will have Ed McCaffrey, who played under Mike Shanahan, have both of their sons win a Super Bowl together in the same roles, right? Where Christian McCaffrey is the player and Kyle Shanahan is the coach. That's kind of cool. That is pretty cool. Like father, like son. We're going to talk about a perfect offseason plan later on in the live show, but I do want to show Nick Chubb some love because we've talked about Chubb the last 2 or 3 weeks here on the channel, and I think some of my opinions / takes, if you will, have gotten misconstrued as I'm not rooting for Nick Chubb to return. That could not be more further from the truth. I could just recognize the possibility of an older running back coming off a major knee injury with a big cap hit in 2024 could be, unfortunately, a perfect storm of him not returning. I'm not rooting for that to happen, but I'm also not going to stick my head in the sand and act like there's no way that happens. So I want to show Nick Chubb some love. Type 24. Priority number 1 is Nick Chubb comes back healthy. That is a win for everyone. So let's show the guy some love. Spam 24 in the chat right now. I would love for him, enjoying his offseason, definitely rehabbing a lot, to come across this video. See all those 24s, and I bet he'll throw on an extra 24 pounds in his next dead squat or deadlift, and, well, that's just Nick Chubb for you. Okay, William 24, Scott 24, Cool Guy 24, Julian 24, Josh 24. Get those 24s in the chat. Let's go. Let's show Nick Chubb some love. We do have a mailbag at the end of the show, by the way, so get those questions in right now. Hashtag Browns or Super Chat. Like Josh, if you Super Chat, you get on screen for everyone to see, and you skip the line. So if you want to guarantee that your question gets on screen, Super Chat, whether it's a take, an opinion, or anything like that, Super Chats are always greatly appreciated. If you're unable to, no harm, no foul. Hashtag Browns. You just got to use hashtag Browns somewhere in the chat. You got to have the hashtag next to the word Browns. If it's separated, the software can't pull it and put it on screen. But coming up on today's show, the latest news and rumors, thanks to our Bernie heads as always. And then a perfect off-season plan for your Cleveland Browns, designed by yours truly. And then we have a mailbag. So like I was just mentioning, hashtag Browns or Super Chat to be a part of said mailbag. Okay, are we ready to jump into the live show? Only 27 likes so far. Not going to cut it. Not going to cut it. Let's get ourselves to at least 30 likes. We're 3 likes away. 3 more people hit that thumbs up button, and then we are going to get this plane off the ground and jump into a live Cleveland Browns report. Cool Guy, appreciate you getting your question in. Josh, let's save it for the mailbag. His Super Chat literally says the mailbag. Ask and you shall receive. Let's do that. Okay. Are we ready to jump into a live Cleveland Browns report? Okay. I'm just going to get myself ready for Josh's question because he's all about 2024 opponents. Okay. Here we go. I am prepared. Before we get to all the latest on your Cleveland Browns, we are at the end of the month, and I was looking at the subscribers picked up by our channel, The Browns Report, and our Steelers channel here at Chat Sports, Steelers Talk with Jack Sperry, and we are about 20 subs away, so we are right there at the end of the month. It is not too late for a push and to make a fourth quarter comeback like the 49ers did. So hit the sub button down below if you want to be a tone setter of beating the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024. Now, before we get into the Browns news and rumors roundup, it has been a while since we shared our Bernie heads as a rumor meter. So when we use our friend Bernie Kosar as a scale of believability, this is the chart. 1 Bernie head means small shreds of truth. 2 Bernie heads, people are talking. 3 Bernie heads, pretty likely. And 4 Bernie heads, Believeland. So with those in mind, let's get into our first segment today, which is, was the Ken Dorsey addition a good hire at the offensive coordinator role? I'm going to give this one 2 Bernie heads. I think if you're acting like it's a 4 Bernie head, you're probably just trying to speak it into existence a little bit, more than maybe you absolutely believe it to your core. And if you're a 0 Bernie head, a fake news kind of person, you just always believe in the worst. But I'm not here to evaluate Ken Dorsey as a play caller. And that's what I wouldn't say led to his demise in Buffalo. It was more so the turnovers, which he's not the one on the field turning it over. But all I care about out of Ken Dorsey is his ability to maximize Deshaun Watson. That is the number one thing that has to be accomplished with this hire. What can Ken Dorsey bring to the table when game planning for getting the most out of Deshaun Watson for all 4 quarters? Because Deshaun Watson is a very talented quarterback, but even himself has admitted he's not the best at the first quarter, the first half, the first 15 plays. And that's not a slight against Kevin Stefanski's pregame script. That is just him as a quarterback all the way from high school to the pros. He's always done better as the season has progressed and as the game has progressed. When you've got superstar quarterbacks in the AFC like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and the list goes on and on. You need 4 great quarters out of your quarterback. So I'm not quite sure if you can get by that way. But let's kind of just dispel some of the fallacies a little bit surrounding the Buffalo Bills offense. So the Buffalo Bills, when they moved on from Ken Dorsey to go to Joe Brady as the interim head coach, I think some people believe their offense dramatically improved. Facts don't care about your feelings. And the facts say the offense under Ken Dorsey versus Joe Brady really wasn't any different. They averaged 0.8 more points per game. Like, if that's what you want to hang a banner over, that Ken Dorsey got them a little bit less than a point a game more, good for you, I guess. But the big number difference is the turnovers. And in Ken Dorsey's defense, I've never been a big believer in coaches are responsible for turnovers. Coaches are not the ones putting the ball on the ground. Coaches are not the ones throwing the football. A coach can do everything up to playing the game. That goes all the way from Little League to the pros. Coaches can put players in better positions to be successful, but they are not the ones who drop the ball when they take a big hit. And that's not something that we can fairly put on Ken Dorsey. Now, Josh Allen is going to be used as a measuring stick for Deshaun Watson with Ken Dorsey now as his offensive coordinator. And once again, facts don't care about your feelings. Let's look at Josh Allen's stats with his 3 different offensive coordinators. With Brian Daboll, and again, they're not all equal because some of these are at different points in Josh Allen's career, but under Brian Daboll, you can see that he had 62% completion percentage, 231 yards per game, and a rating of 91 on the dot. Under Ken Dorsey, completion percentage up, yards per game up, rating up. Under Joe Brady, completion percentage down, yards per game down, rating down. I'm not here to say that Ken Dorsey is the perfect offensive coordinator. What I'm here to say is if your reason for disliking the Ken Dorsey hire is because the Bills were better without him, that's just actually not really true. I mean, there's a bazillion metrics you can use to evaluate players and to push your agenda or your narrative, but some of the vanilla-esque metrics to evaluate success for offenses in the NFL all show that Ken Dorsey wasn't necessarily the problem in Buffalo. It was they could not finish off drives. They kept stalling out, and that is something you can put on Ken Dorsey. But they also were turning the ball over at an extremely high rate, and that's not on Ken Dorsey, in my opinion. So grade the Ken Dorsey hire, A, B, C, D, or F. Scroll on down. It's the pinned comment. If an ad break comes on by around this time, while the ad is rolling, give me an A, B, C, D, or F. I'll give it a B. I don't think it's an A grade. I think there are probably coordinators out there that may have been better candidates and could have done a better job potentially, but I don't think it's an F. I don't think it's a D. I think Ken Dorsey can come in here and he can make this Browns offense better. Were there candidates that could have done a better job? Potentially. It's really hard to say. It's January. We're going to debate about this for months on end when nothing can be done until football really gets underway in September. So hit pause on that. We can revisit this conversation later. If you were really against the Jim Schwartz hire, nothing you could have done or said would have proved anything up until football season got underway. And if we revisit that conversation now, for anyone that said the Jim Schwartz hire was a F or a D or a C, you look pretty silly at the moment. Wouldn't you agree? Let's switch gears and let's talk about the next rumor on today's show, which is T. Higgins. Is T. Higgins coming to Cleveland? I'm going to give T. Higgins what did I say? T. Higgins coming to Cleveland? Give it 1 Bernie head, right in between that 1 to 2 Bernie heads, in my opinion. Because I don't think T. Higgins posting on Instagram or following a couple of Browns players on Instagram should be the ultimate indicator of T. Higgins is going to become a Cleveland Brown. Now, if you're not really sure what I'm talking about, this story kind of took Browns Twitter by storm. And that was T. Higgins followed a couple of Browns players like Elijah Moore and Deshaun Watson on Instagram. And then people started connecting the dots that, oh, well, if T. Higgins is following Browns players on Instagram, that means he wants to go to Cleveland. Let's actually take a step back here and talk about, this is kind of a crazy thing to unpack, but we're going to unpack why would T. Higgins follow these Browns players on Instagram? One, a couple of reasons. They could be friends. That might sound outlandish, but maybe they could be friends. Number 2, he could be using this to gain leverage with the Cincinnati Bengals. He has spoke very kindly about the Cincinnati Bengals, about wanting to stay in Cincinnati. So maybe following some of their division rival players on Instagram will light a fire under the Bengals to, up talks with with Higgins and his reps. That's one option. Option number 3, he wants to come to Cleveland. And that's the one that everyone jumped to. And I understand it's January. It's more fun to live in that world. I'm not going to blame you for that. But Deshaun Watson on his podcast just a few days ago did talk about T. Higgins. He said, we're going to take good care of you. The Cleveland fans are going to love you to death. We got the Clemson ties. We ain't get to play with each other, but this is our opportunity. So, man, come on over to the land. Personally, as fun as it might be to talk about T. Higgins coming over to Cleveland, pairing with Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper, which would be insane, I don't see it happening. And there's 2 big hurdles. The first hurdle is if T. Higgins truly is allowed to walk out the front door of the Cincinnati Bengals front office and test the open market, I don't see the Browns being able to afford Higgins. I remember last year. Remember how badly people wanted the Browns to sign Javon Hargrave and Jesse Bates? Did that happen? No. Browns got outbid. And I think T. Higgins will very likely be outbid by other teams who have much more cap space than Cleveland. That's hurdle number 1. Hurdle number 2 is I don't really believe the Cincinnati Bengals are going to let T. Higgins just walk out the front door. I would envision they would put the franchise tag on him. Maybe try and work out a long-term deal, but they may end up doing a tag and trade situation. And if that happens, they are not trading him to the Cleveland Browns. And I don't think I need to explain why. But if they really do let him walk out the front door and test the open market, Spotrac does contract projections for some of the marquee free agents. I don't think it's the most 100% accurate projection because that's what it is, a projection. But they think T. Higgins on the open market could get a 4-year, $74.4 million contract. That's an average of $18.6 million. Amari Cooper's got a $20 million cap hit this year. You're going to bring T. Higgins in, probably do the Andrew Berry special of low cap hit year 1 and then balloon it up towards the end. And maybe they could get that through, but it doesn't seem very likely the Browns would be able to afford T. Higgins if a bidding war came down to it because the Browns are currently about $20 million over the cap. And they can get below the cap, but are they going to get below the cap enough to give T. Higgins what some other teams with much more cap space could? That I'm not so confident about. But we can all agree that T. Higgins is a great player. I mean, sure, none of us are big supporters of the Cincinnati Bengals, but we can at least acknowledge that T. Higgins has been the number 2 in Cincinnati, and I think he's ready to leave Kentucky and be the number 1 in a lot of other places. And with the Browns, he could inherit the number 1 role after Amari Cooper moves on. So will T. Higgins, in your opinion, end up in Cleveland? Yes or no, right? Not do you want to see T. Higgins come to Cleveland, but gun to your head type of situation. Is T. Higgins a Brown? I don't think he is. It would be awesome, don't get me wrong, but just I don't believe that's going to be the case. Now, before we get on to the final rumor on today's show, I do want to tell everyone about Prize Picks. Now, what is Prize Picks? It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So for Super Bowl Sunday, here are some of my selections. I like the more on Patrick Mahomes at half a passing yard. I also like the more, can we actually just half a passing yard? That's what Prize Picks is doing for the dog pound. I also like the more on Isaiah Pacheco at half a touchdown. And then finally, the more on Brock Purdy's passing yards at 248.5. So if you like my selections, feel free to ride with me. Another piece of advice, if you struggle with your girlfriend or wife or fiance staying engaged in a football game, make a Prize Picks selections for them and say, hey, if this hits, dinner on Prize Picks. Steak dinner, thanks to my selections. So go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. That link is in the comments and description of today's video. Third rumor on today's show, Maurice Hurst. Is he going to return to Cleveland? I'm going to give this one 2 Bernie heads, but it's much closer to 3 Bernie heads than 2 Bernie heads. So Maurice Hurst recently did an interview. He was at a Cleveland sports event, And he talked about potentially returning to the Browns. And here's what he had to say. It's definitely a special spot. I've been lucky to be at a few great spots. Being here with the guys that we have in that room, that we have, and the coaches that we have, it's really something that you can tell we are building. That we could be that team that wins it all at some point. Maurice Hurst was signed for a cheap 1 year, $1.2, $1.3 million contract, and man, did it pay off. For being a rotational defensive lineman, he had 1.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 5 QB hits. Oh, and he had that awesome interception against the Colts as well. Maurice Hurst as being this team's number 3, number 4-esque defensive tackle, going with Jordan Elliott and Dalvin Tomlinson. I loved what I saw out of Mo Hurst. And so did Andrew Berry, by the way. Here's what he had to say about Maurice Hurst returning. Mo was excellent. Not just the acrobatic pick he was able to make in the Seattle game, but he really embodied what we wanted in an attack front throughout the entire year. And as you all probably got a sense of, Mo's a big personality. He's great for the locker room. He really gelled with the group, so we couldn't be more pleased with the season that he had up until the injury. Now, let's check out the Browns' defensive line rotation because they have some impending free agents. Jordan Elliott, Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst. 3 out of your 4 rotating defensive linemen are all unrestricted free agents. And I could see Jordan Elliott getting some dollars thrown his way from another team. Shelby Harris at his age, I think he'll be happy just to get an offer. And maybe the Browns are that team to run it back. Dalvin Tomlinson is still under contract. Siaka Ika hopefully takes a big leap forward in year 2, but I can't confidently say that Siaka Ika is ready to start in 2024. So the Browns may look to bring back Maurice Hurst, which I know he signed a 1-year contract, and often you feel like, oh, they're probably just going to go with a younger player. But that actually hasn't really been the case necessarily under Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry has not shied away from re-signing impending free agents to 1-year contracts. Josh Dobbs signed him, free agent, re-signed him. Rashard Higgins, re-signed to a 1-year deal. Michael Dunn, Chris Hubbard, re-signed to 1-year contracts when their first contract was up. Jadeveon Clowney, signed him, free agent, re-signed him. Anthony Walker, Taki, what happened when their contracts ended? They were both re-signed to 1-year contracts. Jordan Kunashik, re-signed to a 1-year contract. Malcolm Smith, we saw some good things out of him in 2020, re-signed to a 1-year deal. Ronnie Harrison, traded for him, contract was up, re-signed him to a 1-year contract. So would you re-sign Maurice Hurst? Sign or pass? As long as it's not going to break the bank, if you can get him back for a 1-year, $1.5 million contract, the only downside I could really see is he might be robbing snaps from a developmental defensive tackle. And maybe the Browns want to go that route in the draft. But the Browns, they don't have the ability to be big spenders in free agency this year like they were last year. So I'm looking for value signings. And Maurice Hurst, for what he played for last year and the production the Browns got out of him, that's terrific value. I want to wrap up the show by talking about some AFC North news here because Tom Pelissero tweeted out the Steelers are hiring Falcons or former Falcons head coach Arthur Smith as their next offensive coordinator. And I've seen some Browns fans kind of like treat this like a victory lap. I don't think this is the victory lap that Browns fans think it is. I don't think Arthur Smith is a bad offensive coordinator. I think we can learn from Arthur Smith's stint as the Falcons head coach that there are some coaches that are great coordinators and just some that are great head coach or great coordinators that don't turn to great head coaches. I kind of botched that. But take Jim Schwartz as a prime example. Didn't really work out as a head coach in Detroit. Won a Super Bowl as a DC in Philadelphia and turned this Browns defense around immediately. Would Steelers fans laugh at the Browns hiring Jim Schwartz because he didn't make as a great, successful head coach? If they did, they were idiots. I don't think Arthur Smith having a 7-10 season in Atlanta should be a sign of the Steelers are getting an awful offensive coordinator. I think Arthur Smith got the best football anyone ever got out of Ryan Tannehill. We were talking about Ryan Tannehill being elite because of what Arthur Smith was able to do. Ultimately, it didn't work out in Atlanta for a handful of reasons, but the offense wasn't one of the worst offenses in the league. So this is not the victory lap I think some people should be taking. All right, let's wrap up the show by picking a card. Trizzy Trace joining us during our live show every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Trace, what do you want to go with?
I'm going Ace of Diamonds today.
Ace of Diamonds?
Oh, yeah.
2 of clubs.
2 of clubs.
Doing the opposite, kind of.
I like it.
Here we go. We're right in the middle. 8 of hearts.
There you go.
8 of hearts. Okay, that's going to do it for us on this edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come hang out with us here on the channel. If you have not subscribed, don't make me beg. Please go ahead and do so. I would really appreciate it. Would you re-sign Maurice Hurst? Sign or pass? What are we thinking, boys and girls? What are we thinking? Did anyone get it right? Oh, Josh was 1 off. 7 of hearts. Jersey Dogs has 7 of hearts, too. 126 people tuned in at the moment. What are we thinking? Time Man says sign. Cool Guy says sign. What are we thinking? Okay. Did Time Man predict the Bernie heads? No, he did not. Time Man, what am I reading here? Did Time Man predict? Next one is 1 Bernie head. The last one is 2. That's freaky. He is in the dock. Time Man is...
Maybe that's how he knows when we're going live and putting videos out so often, because he's like bugged the office. So he knows. He knows
I don't
we do
hate
the
that.
script.
I don't hate that. Terry says sign. Mark says sign. Ray and AFX both say sign. I think we might have a unanimous decision. Let's run it back with Mo Hurst. Let's run it back with Mo Hurst. I also like that 73% of the grade for the Ken Dorsey hire is either A or B. That seems much more rational than just, oh, it's a D. The Bills fired him. I get it. My initial reaction was like, I don't know how much I love this hire, but I can warm up to it. Are we ready to talk about a perfect offseason, though? I'm excited. This is a fun segment that we do here at Chat Sports. Every single channel owner does a perfect offseason, and it's a fun little, it's a fun thing to revisit, because you'll either look back and maybe you get some of your wishes and you have buyer's remorse, or you'll be like, I told you guys to do this. Look how great that worked out. Or you just get it completely wrong.
You say you should have done this. You should have signed this player, and then they go ball out another team.
Exactly. Okay. With that being said, we've got a perfect offseason plan, a 5-step plan. Andrew Berry, I know you tuned in right now. Get a pen, get a paper, write it down. You ready? Let's do it. Perfect off-season plan time on the Cleveland Browns Report. Matthew Peterson here running through my perfect 5-step plan for Andrew Berry, who I know is watching right now, so write it down so you don't forget. So let's run through some of the facts surrounding the Browns off-season before we get into step 1, because I think this could serve as a good primer, a good baseline here. The Browns are currently $20-ish million over the salary cap. They're going to have to get below the salary cap, whether that is moving on from players or restructuring contracts. They also don't have the best draft ammunition. Some would say it's the worst, actually. They are, I believe, the last team to make a draft pick, unless we get some trades, and they only have 1 pick in their 2 picks in the top 100, a 2nd and a 3rd. They've got a pair of 5s, a pair of 6s, and a 7th, and they need help at wide receiver, linebacker, unless they bring back some of their players, running back if Nick Chubb does not get good rehab news, defensive line because 3 out of their 4 rotating defensive linemen are free agents, and I'll go interior offensive line as well. Some depth is needed there, but also might be planning for the future if the Browns plan to move on from either Petonio or Teller before their contract is up. So with that being said, step number 5 as we count down to number 1 for a perfect offseason is actually re-signing Za'Darius Smith. This perfect offseason, by the way, is not sign the top 5 free agents and call it a day. That's not going to happen. Now, I'm still going to live in fantasy land a little bit, but I'm going to try and have a sense of realism while running through this. Za'Darius Smith this past season did not get to that coveted 10-plus sacks, the double-digit sacks that we always use to evaluate whether or not edge rushers are good or not. But he did have one outlier metric, 60 pressures from PFF. 60 pressures is the name of the game right now. You know how batting average went out and OPS came in? I'm sensing the same for evaluating edge rushers. Sacks are about to go out, not as bad as batting average did though, and pressures is about to come in. Because the Browns' defensive line, they've got a lot of impending free agents. Shelby Harris joining Za'Darius Smith, Jordan Elliott, and Maurice Hurst. I'm sure Andrew Berry would love to bring back some of those players, but I'm a big fan of the idea of re-signing Za'Darius Smith because you won't have to break the bank for him. He's getting up there in the age column. He's not coming off a fantastic year where there's going to be a bunch of teams lining up to pay hand over fist for his services. He comes off a 5.5 sack season, but like I said, it's the pressures that really jump out to me because his PFF pass rush grade, 87.4. That was top 10. His win percentage, 18.5. That ranked 8th out of 57 players. So we're talking about a guy that was winning a lot. He was pressuring the quarterback, but ultimately he wasn't logging the sacks. What does that mean, right? Ultimately, it means that he is disrupting plays. He is causing the offense to have aborted plays, failures, incomplete passes, just objective bad plays offensively. And it might not result in a loss of yards for them, but if we can change 2nd and 10 to 3rd and 10 because Za'Darius Smith on the first play got to Joe Burrow and forced an incomplete pass, I'm in. Now, Andrew Berry, in his end-of-the-year press conference, talked about this exact thing when speaking to the media. I would say on the Browns sack production this past season, I would say probably the bigger picture is we're actually probably a little bit more focused on how much pressure we create because ultimately that's what leads to negative plays for an offense and advantageous plays for a defense. And we were really pleased with that this year. So your average casual Browns fan might go, oh, they re-signed Za'Darius Smith. Why? He had 5.5 sacks last year. Because it's all about pressures, baby. It's all about pressures. Now, there are some other very notable free agent edge rushers out there, but Josh Allen and Brian Burns are going to be likely re-signed candidates. And if not, the Browns, I don't think will be able to afford them. Chase Young is an interesting prospect. I know a lot of the Buckeyes fans watching right now would love to have him return to Ohio, but I'm questioning his effort at times. And that does not seem like a good fit for a Jim Schwartz defense. Jonathan Grenard, he had a breakout year with the Texans. I'm sure Houston would love to bring him back as well, but that could be someone that Andrew Berry swings for. But Za'Darius Smith at 31, I know that might not seem, and it isn't a long-term option opposite of Myles Garrett, but I think if you could sign Za'Darius Smith to a contract like this one, 2 years, $12 million, $6 million a season, like I'm looking for bargains here, right? I'm looking for good deals because $20 million over the cap, you can make some moves, but you're not going to be able to sign all of your dream players. And I think Za'Darius Smith for $6 million a season, and you could allocate your funds to other positions, is a good deal for Cleveland. So let me know. Should the Browns re-sign Za'Darius Smith? Yes or no? Scroll on down to the comment section. Be honest with me. Do you want to see Za'Darius Smith come back? Perfect offseason step number 4. Draft Texas defensive tackle Byron Murphy. So I've been honing in on my draft coverage, and with the Browns not picking until the mid-50s of round number 2, the Browns are in an interesting spot trying to identify who they want to take. And free agency will be a big factor in where the Browns go. But the Browns, with their second-round pick, that's the first time they are on the clock, no first-rounder, as we all know, they have got to make that pick count because they have some holes on this team after free agency that they may not be able to fill through free agency. And if that's the case, last year, the Browns went into the draft having all their homework done. The draft was essentially extra credit for 2023 production, right? Did the Browns get much out of their rookies? DeJuan Jones stepped in and filled in very nicely for Jack Conklin, but if Jack Conklin doesn't get hurt, the Browns kind of go that whole season without needing to have big plays being made by rookies from their team. This year, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think this year they are going to have to get some big plays out of their rookies. And I want to see Byron Murphy be an early draft target for them if he slips out of round 1. This is where it kind of becomes a dream/perfect offseason because he's right there on the fence of round 1 to round 2. But I'm old enough to remember when the Browns were mocked to take Siaka Ika in round 2. They got him in round 3. When they were going to take Perrion Winfrey in round 2, they got him in round 4. Interior defensive linemen, they're not the sexiest pick for GMs. Now, some background on Murphy, 3-year player, 1-year starter down in Austin. He was a 2023 second-team All-American. He's also the number 2 interior defensive lineman on Mel Kiper's big board. Now, Byron Murphy, this past season for the Longhorns, had 8.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and 7 QB hits. Now, he's got another teammate entering the draft, Sweat. He's more of your run stopper. Murphy's more of your athletic defensive lineman. And the Browns added their tree stump last offseason in Dalvin Tomlinson. And if I think about what Andrew Berry looks for in defensive tackles, Jordan Elliott, Tommy Togiai, Perion Winfrey, maybe he breaks up that run because it wasn't very productive, but he likes the slightly slimmer defensive tackles that can rush the quarterback as well. And Byron Murphy can do that for you. We have 3 more steps to get to on this perfect offseason plan, but first, lock yourself in for the best upcoming free agency news and rumors, as that is just around the corner. We are at 33,000, or we are almost at 33,500 subscribers, a little under 300 to go. So chipping away, baby. Hit the sub button and get yourself the best free Browns content. Number 3, trade for 49ers linebacker Dre Greenlaw. I told you it was a perfect, and I told you it was slightly a fever dream, but I think this would be a great move for the Browns, especially if you want to go all in on 2024. Now, Dre Greenlaw has been a fantastic piece of this 49ers defense, and I think if you gave San Francisco a call after they win the Super Bowl potentially, they could be riding that Super Bowl high, and they'll just say yes to anything. And maybe the Browns offer a 2025 third-round pick. Now, let's talk about Dre Greenlaw in more detail for a moment. He's got 1 year remaining on his contract, which has an $8.1 million base salary. That is what the Browns would be picking up. Now, the 49ers, for any Niners fans watching right now, I'm sure you don't like the idea of trading Dre Greenlaw. And it's not something that many people are forecasting. But if you think a few steps ahead for San Francisco, and they've got impending free agents like Brandon Ayuk and Brock Purdy coming up soon, they're going to have a lot of mouths to feed. And maybe they have to make sacrifices. And if you're thinking about what positions teams make sacrifices at, off-ball linebacker tends to be one of the first ones to go. And the Browns, who need another linebacker next to JOK, because Taki and Anthony Walker are both free agents, well, this would be a big upgrade in my opinion. Dre Greenlaw in 2023, 120 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, able to get after the quarterback, 1.5 sacks, 4 pass breakups. I'm a big fan of Dre Greenlaw. I think he's one of the up-and-coming linebackers in our game. And once again, when you look at the Browns linebacker room, if they don't plan on re-signing Anthony Walker and Taki to back-to-back 1-year contracts, maybe they give San Francisco a call and ask what it would take to get Dre Greenlaw, because the 49ers know they're not going to be able to pay everyone, and they are fortunate to get by right now with Brock Purdy making $750,000 a year, but there's going to be a bill to be paid in the coming years, and there may be casualties as a result. And so maybe the 49ers decide, let's get a draft pick for Greenlaw while we can before we have to let him walk in free agency. This would be an all-in move for 2024. I'm not even 100% certain that the Browns would extend Dre Greenlaw. I don't even know if you have to extend Dre Greenlaw for it to be a success of a trade. But if you want to take 2024 by the horns and maximize your potential of winning a Super Bowl, getting Dre Greenlaw, a top 25 linebacker, on the last year of his cheap contract might not be the worst idea. Before we get on to my final 2 steps of a perfect offseason, we do have an awesome deal going on with our friends over at Fanatics, where you can get this Brownie the Elf t-shirt 30% off. If you want to re-up your Browns wardrobe, go to chatsports.com/elf shirt. Now, I put that link in the comments and description. Just click that link and get yourself or get your friend a new Brownie the Elf t-shirt, 30% off. Part number 2 of a dream perfect offseason. Nick Chubb returns. This is what would be a perfect offseason for the Browns. That they get news that Nick Chubb's rehab is going great, he is ahead of schedule, and the Browns are going to get Batman back at 100% in 2024. In a perfect world, Nick Chubb makes a great recovery, a perfect recovery. His rehab goes swimmingly well this offseason, and any contract issues are resolved. How they are resolved, I don't care. Extend him, agree to less money, whatever. But if the Browns are going to be a successful team in 2024, I think Nick Chubb would be a big part of it. And I also want Nick Chubb to be a big part of it. Like Andrew Berry said, no one wants to see Nick Chubb's last carry for Cleveland be week 2 in Pittsburgh. But there is that not perfect world reality that we have to accept, which is big cap hit, age, knee injury. That's the Bermuda Triangle of death for running backs. So, again, if we're talking dream offseason, my dream is to get a notification some point this offseason that Nick Chubb's rehab is going perfect. He is ahead of schedule, and the Browns think he could be even ready as soon as training camp. That's pushing it, but it's my dream, so I'll do what I want. But like I said, Andrew Berry did acknowledge that there is some business to this, right? When talked about Nick Chubb during his presser, he said, Nick, I can say for myself, no one in the organization, I understand, our family, nobody wants to see that carry in Pittsburgh be the last time he carries the ball for the Cleveland Browns. And obviously, there are things that we'll have to work through. But that would not be our intention as well. We obviously will work to keep him on the team. The key word is work, right? They're going to work towards it, but he's not guaranteeing anything. And I think some people kind of lost sight of that when that press conference went down last week. But like I said, age, knee injury, and a near $16 million cap hit, if Nick Chubb, and I wouldn't blame him for this, says no to taking a pay cut because he has been the heart and soul of that locker room for nearly half a decade, and the Browns go, well, we don't want to pay you $15.8 million or cap hit-wise. Will you take less money? And Nick Chubb says no. And the Browns go, well, we have to move on then. Like, that could be a very unfortunate reality. And I don't want that to reality be the case. So in my perfect offseason, Nick Chubb makes a full recovery. I don't care how they get the contract stuff done. They get it done, and 24 comes back. So let's show Nick Chubb some love right now. Spam 24 in the comment section. I want to see who could type 24 the most. I want to see who could type 24 2,400 times. Maybe not that many times. But spam 24 down below in the comment section. Final step in a perfect offseason plan. Sign Mike Evans. There has been a lot of discussion about which wide receiver the Browns should go after this offseason. And Mike Evans, at 30 years old, I still think has some really good football left in him. And Mike Evans, over the last 4 years, over his entire career, has been one thing: 1K plus. That's all he knows. Whether it's in 2020, getting by 6 extra yards, all he knows is 1,000 yards. And then you toss in all the touchdowns that go along with it, and Mike Evans would be, I think, very, very complimentary to what Deshaun Watson does as a quarterback, which is extend plays, right? And not extend plays so he can take off on his feet. Deshaun Watson is not a runner first. He wants to pass the football. So when he extend plays, he's looking around and he goes, I got to just kind of chuck it up, F it. Mike Evans is the prototypical F it. He's down there somewhere. He's going to make the catch. He's going to bring it in. Amari Cooper's great at it as well. So let's give, instead of getting a Batman Robin, you can get 2 Batmans potentially. Now, when you look at the Browns' wide receiver room, you've got Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, and David Bell all under contract. Now, I'm sure the Browns are more upbeat than maybe we think they are about Moore and Tillman, and even David Bell, who ended the year on a high note, coming in and playing well in 2024. But if they are serious about getting the best and getting the most out of Deshaun Watson in 2024, getting a guy like Mike Evans surely would go a long way. Now, what would it cost to get Mike Evans? Well, I cooked up a dream, realistic-ish contract. This is on the more team-friendly side. I'm sorry, Mike, but it's a 3-year, $50 million contract that pays $16.6 million, and half of it are guaranteed. For a 30-year-old wide receiver, I'm sure Mike Evans is looking for more since his resume speaks for itself, but again, it's my dream. So we're kind of in that middle ground between realistic and what I would like to see happen. I also think DeAndre Hopkins' contract can serve as not quite a baseline, but as a little indicator. Because D-Hop, I wouldn't say was in that very different stage of his career than Mike Evans when they both became free agents, or when DeAndre Hopkins became a free agent last year and Mike Evans will become one this year. Hopkins had missed some time before he became a free agent, but he signed a 2-year, $26 million contract. That's an average of $13 million a season. So you turn around to Mike Evans and you go, we're going to give you an extra year. We're going to give you $15 extra million guaranteed, and we're going to bump your overall salary from $13 million to $16 million. So it's a bump for Mike Evans across the board, but it's not going to reset the wide receiver market. Now, if the Browns unfortunately could not land Mike Evans, there are some other very notable wide receivers. Calvin Ridley is a name to watch for. Marquise Brown could bring that speed element they were really hoping to get out of Marquise Goodwin, and ultimately they could not. Other big body receivers, Michael Pittman Jr., Noah Brown. If you're looking for speedy slot guys, Darnell Mooney, although he plays very well outside as well. KJ Osborne could be one to watch. Gabriel Davis. So there are lots of really good wide receivers in free agency. And I'll also add, this NFL draft class is loaded with wide receivers. So for all the teams out there that need help at wide receiver, they may think, sure, we could pay Mike Evans $17 million a season, or we could draft Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze and pay him a fraction of that for 4 to 5 years. Maybe they all decide to just wait for the draft. And then Mike Evans gets a call from his agent going, I got bad news. No one's going to pay you what you're looking for. However, the Browns are interested in paying you a little bit less. How about that? And maybe that's the way the Browns get to Mike Evans. So which wide receiver do you want to sign? Let's kind of wrap up the show of a perfect offseason for Cleveland by talking about which wide receiver you want to see the Browns sign down below in the comment section. Let's pick a card.
Let's do it.
Trace patiently presses all the buttons for this moment right here.
I'm so excited.
What are you going to go with?
I'm going to go with the 6 of clubs.
6 of clubs? I'm going to go with the 7 of diamonds.
I like it.
10 of spades.
Dang.
10 of spades. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Hit me up on Twitter, by the way, or X, I guess, at Matthew Petey if you want to talk more brownies over there. DMs are always open. I'm also not too cool to not reply to people, so you can just tweet at me any takes or questions you have, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Which wide receiver do you guys want to see the Browns sign? Soul Train, Mike Evans and Gabe Davis. Rusty says Michael Pittman. AFX, Higgins, but Mooney. I like Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney had a breakout year for the Bears in year 2 in Chicago. Then didn't really live up to the hype in the next 2 seasons. But I think Darnell Mooney, for what he's going to get projected to receive in the open market, would be a very good value signing. Okay, we do have some Super Chats. Let's hit the Super Chats in the mailbag. That sound good to everyone? We all on board? I see Lil Beam getting a question in. John, not happening, John. I got bad news for you. Sean Watson is not getting traded. Mike Evans in a Browns jersey. Man, you want to talk about college kids just foaming at the mouth for Mike Evans Browns jersey to wear at a Darty? That's it right there.
That would go really hard, actually.
If we're ranking Browns jerseys to wear,
Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Manziel's the 1-1.
1-1, not even close.
I think number 2 might be OBJ.
Great one.
Yes.
That's a good.
That's
Jarvis?
a great one. Jarvis, I think, is too particular to Cleveland.
Yeah.
I don't think your average NFL fan would get that. Your
David,
average NFL fan might think Johnny Manziel, I got to get that
Myles
jersey.
Garrett's a good one.
Myles Garrett's a good one for sure.
I also personally, I wouldn't mind, if I saw a David Njoku jersey, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Nick Chubb could be up there as well.
Nick Chubb's a good one. Nick Chubb, good Darty jersey, actually.
I have a good trivia question for you.
Oh, we got trivia from Coop, yeah.
We got Coop.
Last Heisman to start at quarterback and win the Super Bowl.
Last quarterback to start at
To win the Heisman and start and win the Super Bowl.
Okay, quarterbacks who have won Heismans lately.
Hint.
Lamar,
80s.
no. Pardon?
80s.
80s?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Doug Flutie?
Close? No.
Did he do both, though?
He won the Heisman. Don't think he won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you're right. The trivia question is the last.
Yes.
Staubach! I got it!
Roger Staubach. He's one of them?
Jim Plunkett.
Jim Plunkett. Yeah, that was not going to come to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Some say we know ball.
Oh, Josh Gordon's elite.
Oh, Josh Gordon's
that's
a good
great one. We just lost our jobs.
Josh Gordon
That
is a
guy,
really good
McFly, gets our jobs. You're the new host of the Browns Report.
Josh Gordon's a great one.
Yep. Embarrassing. Okay. Are we ready to talk Brownies mailbag? Let's do it. Hashtag Browns or Super Chat. If you Super Chat, we guarantee your question gets on screen. If you go the hashtag Browns route, no problem. But producer Trace just picks his favorite question. And I don't know what he's feeling today. Okay. Are we ready to dive into it? Let's do it. Mailbag time here on the Cleveland Browns Report. Matthew Peterson answering questions during our live show, which airs every single Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. So I invite you to join next week. But our first question comes in from one of Jason Bateman's best acting performances. He's Pepper in Dodgeball. Okay, Pepper. What do you think about signing Chris Jones? I have seen the thought, we'll call it, tossed out there about the Browns signing Chris Jones. He's going to be a free agent this offseason. Kind of feels like the Chiefs are ready to move on from Chris Jones, at least not pay him what he's looking to be paid. They were hesitant last year. Now, over the last 4 seasons, Chris Jones has been one of the best interior defensive linemen. I could argue in 2020, he was the single best defensive lineman in football, or at least on the interior side, right? Because it's tough to compare interior defensive linemen to exterior guys. But this past season, a bit of a slight regression in some of the metrics, like sacks went down, tackles went down, tackles for loss went down. But I still think if your bad days are 10.5 sacks and 13 tackles for loss, you are still playing really, really good football. Now, personally, I would be interested in signing Chris Jones. I don't know who wouldn't be. Every man's got a price, and I'm sure Chris Jones has a high price. And I don't know if the Browns are going to be able to swing for that. But if the Browns could be in the neighborhood of what Chris Jones is looking for, man, who's going to say no to Chris Jones and Myles Garrett lining up on the same defensive line? I mean, usually offensive line have to prepare for just Myles Garrett, and we saw the Titans did that last year. They had a tight end just follow Myles wherever he went. But you can't even devote the interior defensive line to helping out with blocking Myles as well because Chris Jones is there and tossing guys like Dalvin Tomlinson and Okoronkwo. Sign me up. I am in. Now, let me know, would you sign Chris Jones? Yes or no? Joshua Miller, let's take a look at the 2024 schedule in the mailbag. Okay, so the schedule of the schedule will not come out until May, but we do know the home and away opponents because that's just a formula based on where you finish in the standings and a rotation of all the divisions in the NFL. But I can't tell you who they are playing home and away. You've got your usual divisional suspects. And then at home, they welcome the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Dolphins. On the road, they go to Denver back-to-back years, Las Vegas, Philadelphia, Washington, Jacksonville, New Orleans. So except for Las Vegas and Denver, a lot of Eastern time trips and one Central to New Orleans. So the Browns hopefully won't be going like to Denver in week 2 and Las Vegas in like week 12. Maybe they try and do what they did last year of stay out west, but I don't know if that worked out super well. I mean, they went 0-2 on that road stretch, but those are the schedules. If I'm making a bold prediction, week 1, I know the Browns have a concert at Cleveland Browns Stadium on the Saturday or the Friday or Saturday before week 2. So I'm sensing the Browns are on the road week 2. So are they going to make Cleveland play weeks 1 and week 2 on the road and give them 2 kind of more home games towards the end of the year when it's cold and rainy? Probably not. So I'm thinking week 1 is home. If week 1's home, maybe it's a divisional game. What about the Giants come to town? I can get behind that. New York Giants come to Cleveland week 1. Okay, because there's always one random week 1 game. And then you got some divisional games. Maybe the Browns get a random one after having a divisional one last year. Brad, number 1 Browns fan. What do you think about Arthur Smith going to the Steelers? I think this is a better hire than maybe Browns fans are giving credit for. I think Arthur Smith showed that not everyone could be a head coach. And there are some people that are great coordinators. And look at Jim Schwartz as an example. Awesome DC. Didn't really work out as a head coach. Arthur Smith made Ryan Tannehill look borderline elite. But ultimately, just couldn't figure out the quarterback position in Atlanta, and that was his downfall. And the good news for him is he's no longer in charge of picking the quarterback. So I think Arthur Smith can run the ball well. I do think he's a good coordinator, and I think this is a good hire for Pittsburgh, if I'm being honest. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's mailbag, I do want to show some love to our sponsor, which is Prize Picks. I had the most fun watching football this postseason and winning up to 25 times my money in the process. And now I can play during basketball season as well, of course. And then this little thing called the Super Bowl you might have heard of. So let me tell you guys how Prize Picks works. You choose 2 to 6 players and then pick more or less on their projected stats. So I'm taking the more on Patrick Mahomes at half a passing yard. That's it. Just need the one. Just one. Also more on Isaiah Pacheco at half a touchdown. Just need one. And then Brock Purdy. I like the more on 248.5 passing yards. So if you like my selections, feel free to ride with me, or you can fade me. I don't bat 1,000 at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Now, I'm sure that none of you guys wrote that down, so don't worry. I put it all in the comments and description of today's video. Ray Bidding, what's going on, dude? Could the Browns look at Brandon Ayuk, who will be a free agent? Brandon Ayuk is not going to be a free agent. Yeah. Well, for starters, I don't think he is a free agent in 2024. Is he? He's got his... Let's look here. I'm 90% confident that Brandon Ayuk's contract runs through 2024, and then they're going to exercise his fifth-year option. Yeah, he is under contract for 2024 already. So they could look to trade for Brandon Ayuk, but I think the 49ers want to keep Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco. Now, having a quarterback who makes $800,000 a year is very nice to build out the rest of your roster, but that's going to catch up to the 49ers when Brock Purdy's rookie contract does come to an end, and he is eligible for an extension after his third season, which is coming up next year. So I think this question is better suited for next offseason. I don't think it gets done this year. I don't think the 49ers move on from Brandon Ayuk when he still has 1 year left on his rookie contract. Joshua Miller, Brandon Cooks for a fifth. Would we do it? He has decent history with Watson. I don't think it cost you a fifth. What did the Cowboys trade? Can you look that up, Trace? For Brandon Cooks. They traded around this much. And Brandon Cooks is a year older and not as productive as he was the previous season. I think you could likely get Brandon Cooks on the open market if the Cowboys decide to move on from him and save some cap money. So they traded him for a 2023 fifth rounder and a 2024 sixth. So I don't think it cost you that much, Josh. But as for just adding Brandon Cooks in general, I'm not opposed to it. I think there is something to Deshaun Watson having connections with him. But if we are looking at the Browns' history of building their roster, they really haven't cared what Deshaun Watson did in 2019 or 2020. Like, they didn't get DeAndre Hopkins. They didn't get Will Fuller. They didn't get any of his previous coaches. Why is that going to change now? I think they want to continue to evolve and progress, not try and replicate 2020. William Atwell, how big of a question mark is the cornerback position right now? Should we be thinking about the future now? I would say the cornerback room is the best room in the Cleveland Browns locker room. Like Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, 2 starting caliber cornerbacks on their rookie contracts for a few more years. Denzel Ward, already locked up. He's on a long-term contract, so you don't have to worry about paying him anytime soon. You got 3 Pro Bowl caliber corners right there in my eyes. The Browns cornerback room could not be in a better spot. It just needs to show up in the playoffs. Soul Train, how important is it to get a tall number 2 wide receiver? Aside from Cedric Tillman, they don't have many big bodies. I don't really believe in David Bell. I do think there is some importance to adding some bigger frame receivers. I understand that fans tend to assume that a rookie season for a player is their peak and that players can improve. I am still very optimistic that Cedric Tillman can develop and evolve into a starting caliber wide receiver in the league. David Bell kind of came on as of late last season, but I don't think he is someone that is primed to have a bigger role in this offense. So how important is it to get a tall number 2 wide receiver? If we're getting picky, I would say it's pretty important. I know the Browns wanted to add speed this past offseason. Didn't really get anything out of Marquise Goodwin. Probably wanted a little bit more out of Elijah Moore. But maybe the go-to theme this offseason is let's find the next DeAndre Hopkins type of receiver for Deshaun Watson that he can just chuck it up to. Kevin McFlurry. Should the Browns make an attempt to acquire Ndamukong Suh? Ndamukong Suh is not coming back to the NFL. Came back 2 years ago in 2022, halfway through the season to play the Philadelphia Eagles. Didn't he actually join the practice squad of a team this year? Did he join? Look up. Did he join the Bills practice squad, or am I thinking of someone else? The Browns, I don't believe are. I don't think Leonard Fournette. Okay, yeah, the Browns are not going to acquire Suh. He visited the Dolphins. I kind of remember that. That's what I was thinking of. So, no, and Ndamukong Suh. That we had a fun run with that like 2 years ago. It's over. It's dead. AFX Apocalypse. Okay, AFX. Thank you for. I don't know. Trying to keep it light, I guess. Cowboys laugh in your face. Lil Beam, what do you think about signing Brandon Powell to be our new wide receiver 4 and return man? I also like DeMarcus Robinson from the Rams. Brandon Powell had a really good season. I thought good stretches for the Vikings last season. We're talking about wide receiver 4. I guess this isn't a spot where I think you have to have a strong opinion. It's not going to move the needle all that much ultimately, but I think the Browns will probably try to roll with their rookie contract receivers, Cedric Tillman and David Bell, before going to free agency because they want to see those guys develop and evolve into hopefully future caliber starting receivers for them. Dog Pound, if Dorsey and Staley are picked by Watson, is his days numbered in Cleveland? Are you saying like drafted by the Browns back in 2017? Or are you saying if Dorsey was the one that traded for Watson and then they fired Dorsey and brought in Andrew Berry? Anytime you get a regime change, there's always going to be questions about the quarterback, maybe not being there too much longer since that's not that regime's guy. But I think we sometimes overreact to that. Like if I'm a GM and I'm stepping into a building, the first thing I don't think of is let's gut all the good pieces out. No, that's not a good way to go about conducting a business. You keep your good pieces. So if Deshaun Watson plays well, then I don't think this conversation ever exists. But for now, I wouldn't say his days are numbered. This is just a really difficult hypothetical to answer, dog. All right, we're doing a super chat to wrap up the mailbag before we let you guys get on out of here. Brad, what's going on, dude? Who you want to win, Kansas City or the 49ers? I would like to see the 49ers win. Just kind of getting tired of the Chiefs. I think we all are. And I'm just getting tired of watching Jackson and Brittany Mahomes and Taylor Swift do just skin crawly, and that's putting it lightly, handshakes in the suite. So give me the 49ers. Okay, let's pick a card to wrap up today's mailbag. Trace, what do you want to go with?
Going 9 of spades.
9 of spades? Give me 3 of diamonds.
There you go.
3 of diamonds.
Brrrah. Let's see what it is.
It is.
Get yours in the comment section.
Jack of diamonds.
Oh.
Jack of diamonds. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come hang out with us. As always, you have no idea how much I appreciate it. We will sign off, let you guys get on out of here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Would you sign Chris Jones? Yes or no? First off, Brad, appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Did anyone get it? No, no one got it. That's a bummer. That is a bummer. 5 of clubs. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for us on our live show today. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in every single Tuesday. I got trivia? I do have some trivia. It's a little complex.
Okay.
For a YouTube delivery.
Okay.
But let's go with it.
Let's try it.
Let's go with it. I'm going to give you 4 cities. You got to put them in distance from closest to furthest as the crow flies.
Okay.
From Dallas, Texas.
Got it.
Make sense?
Got it.
The 4 cities are, in no particular order, Las Vegas, Miami, Chicago, Mexico City.
Okay.
Which one is the closest of Las Vegas, Miami, Chicago, Mexico City?
I'm going to say Mexico City.
Is the closest.
Is the closest.
What's the next closest?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. And now we have Chicago and Miami left.
I'm gonna go Miami, Chicago.
So Chicago's the furthest.
No. From Dallas, I'm going Miami, Chicago. Or Miami's the furthest. Chicago third.
Okay.
Miami the furthest.
So you're saying the closest is Mexico City.
Yes.
The next city closest is Las Vegas.
Yes.
Then Chicago.
Yes.
Then Miami.
Yes.
That would be incorrect.
Dang it.
But you did get one of the 4 in the right spot.
Okay, I only got one right.
I think so.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yes. You want to guess which one you got? Which one do you feel most confident about?
I feel confident about number 2. I feel like Las Vegas is the second closest.
No.
Really?
Here's the order. Are we ready? I'm going to give everyone, you can pause it. Closest, this is going off memory now, is Chicago.
Interesting.
Yes. Or is it Mexico City? Well, it's either Chicago or Mexico City. And then it goes Las Vegas and then Miami.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Miami's the furthest?
Yes.
Gotcha.
I think Chicago's the closest, and then Mexico City, and then Las Vegas, and then Miami.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
There you go. More you know.
Yep. Okay. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. We will sign off, and we'll see you guys throughout the week with more Browns news and rumors.